All right, we are live. So, good morning, good day, good afternoon, good evening, good night, wherever you are in the world. I think all of our wonderful panel here, they're spread out all over the world, so they can tell you maybe what time zones they're in when they introduce themselves. I'm Peel Stewart. I'm honored to host this amazing chat as part of Spotlight Indie's Big Indie Weekend. There's been some fantastic discussions. Hope you've had a chance to tune into some of them live. If not, check out the Spotlight Indie YouTube channel and catch the replays. Absolutely fabulous. Our panel today is going to be specifically, the title is Rewriting the Warrior Code. So we're going to discuss the enduring warrior hero archetype, things like the realities of war, the romanticization of this archetype in fiction, and how stories shape concepts of masculinity, family, and esprit de corps. So quickly, I'm going to say, and I will make this announcement again at the end, just want to make sure that, again, with Spotlight Indie, the next panel is an hour from now. It's 4 p.m. Eastern, 9 p.m. GMT. It's hosted by the awesome Holly Tinsley and Fraser Armitage. It is the Spotlight Live Speakers 2026 panel. It has Liam Hogan, Nick Snap, and Ren Hutchings. And that panel is to celebrate the end of the Big Indie Weekend. They're going to wrap it all up, and they're going to talk about what's coming next at the live event for Spotlight Indie in May. And they're also going to have, I think, a giveaway winner announcement and a little bit of a chat. So make sure you check it out. I will make that announcement again at the end of this discussion. So today, I'm joined with some absolutely fabulous authors. I'm going to let them all introduce themselves and just say a bit about what they write and what they do. So now it's going to be my clockwise, I believe. I hope it's the same for everybody else. We'll start off, if we can, with Karim.
Okay, I'm happy to be with you here. I'm Karim Sulaiman from Egypt. I write epic fantasy mostly and sci-fi. I have like 12 books published, 12 in English and one in Arabic. I guess I'm mostly known for my series Tales of Gorania and War of the Last Day. Yeah, that's it.
Fabulous. Thank you so much, Karim. AJ.
Hi, I'm AJ Retker. I'm from Canada. I am reeling from the Olympic gold loss from this morning when the U.S. men's team beat us. I am the best-selling author of Oathbreaker and SPF or Spiffbo semi-finalist, Season of Kings. They were kind of grim, dark medieval fantasy, really nitty-gritty, and yeah, that's basically all I am really known for.
That's a lot. David, please, go ahead.
Hi, I am David Green. I am based in Galway in Ireland. I'm the secretary of the British Fantasy Society and help run FantasyCon in the UK. I am the author of the Empire of Ruin series, which is a 4-book epic fantasy series. I also write an urban fantasy series called Hell and Haven. And I've branched out into cozy fantasy, which is my latest release, which is called Magic, Maps, and Mischief, which has just been picked up by Simon & Schuster after I self-published it because they were afraid that they'd missed out on it. And I was like, great, you can give me all of the money and I will take it and you can have it. But yeah, so it's an interesting concept because I've kind of gone through various different types of fantasy, looking at kind of protagonists and what the role is of warriors and how they come in different forms. So looking forward to talking.
Thank you, David, and congrats on the book deal.
Thank you very much.
Well, Baptiste.
Hey everyone, thanks very much. Thank you very much for inviting me today. My name is Baptiste Masrou. My apologies, my English is not at its best at 5 a.m. That's the time here in Tokyo right now. But I am a historical fiction and historical fantasy writer of 11 books now since Tuesday. And most of them are set in East Asia, so Japan, China. I also have a trilogy of Norse mythology, so also warrior stuffs. So I should be fine here with you guys.
Excellent. And thanks so much for coming. And finally, last but certainly not least, Chantal.
Hi, I'm Chantal Fourie. I'm a UK-based author at the moment. I am halfway through my first series, The Edge of Chaos, which is epic fantasy, grimdark. I've been told it's bleak and bruising despite my sunny exterior. I think that's where I channel my darkness. So I think I'm definitely the baby amongst a lot of these panels that I've seen this weekend, but just really, really excited to be here.
Well, we're excited to have you, very excited to have you and all of you here for this fascinating topic. So if it's okay with everyone, I'm going to dive right in. I think we'll keep the same order going around as I explore some of these aspects of this awesome topic. So if it's okay with everyone, I'll start out. And the first question, talking point we have is the fact that the warrior archetype, it's evolved in modern storytelling compared to classical origins, such as Achilles, etc., heroes like that. You have iconic ancient heroes such as Arthur, and then more modern times you have the Geralt of Rivia's, the Sandang-Gloctas. So I want to ask all the panelists, for you, how do you feel that the warrior archetype has evolved from its origins to now in the 21st century? So I think we'll start off with Kareem.
Yeah, I guess from my point of view, it's about the first thing that catch my mind is on top of my mind is the motives. It was in the old times. It was about glory and all of this noble stuff, but you find Geralt, the motive is it's about coin and getting contracts, and you might find sometimes that he has some a sort of moral compass right now, but the main motive is it's about getting coin and getting money, and sometimes he doesn't want to get involved, and that's something that you don't see in in the classic type, like in Lord of the Rings, for example, like Aragorn, or this bright white noble stuff. So now it's becoming the characters are grayer, and everybody is doing what they see best from their perspective. So actually you can't put like a clear demarcation between right and wrong. It's up for the reader to decide. So for me, I think this is more relevant. Take into consideration that reality maybe is bleaker than and darker than what we see in fiction. So yeah, that's my 2 cents.
Well, that's an excellent point. And of course, grimdark fantasy is one of the most popular subgenres, I believe, now in fantasy. So what you were speaking about, Kareem, that might have a lot to do with it. AJ, what do you have to add?
Yeah, just kind of building on what Kareem said is that, like, I don't know. I personally have noticed the shift from pre-World War I to post World War I, and I think just dealing with the horrors of an industrialized war, seeing your comrades get their legs blown off or whatever, it just completely shell-shocked. The romantic idea of going for glory and country and dying honorably was completely shattered when you see your best friend face down in mud, surrounded by barbed wire and artillery shells. And then that kind of trauma shifted the art form and what it means to be a male hero. So I think one thing I've noticed with more modern male warrior, or not even male warriors, just warriors in general, is that the conflict is more, instead of all external based, that we got to overcome the enemy, we got to overcome the forces of evil, there's more also internal conflict. Like I think a good example of this would be Frank Castle in the Punisher comics and the Punisher show. Yes, he's dealing with the outside forces and the bad guys he's fighting, but he's also fighting with his own PTSD of seeing his family gunned down and the horrors of his own war, his career as a Marine. And I think the more I dive into modern literature, the more I see those internal psychological battles being fought as well as the external conflict.
Excellent. That's an excellent point. David?
Yeah, I think it's quite interesting, even how you phrase the question in terms of use the word archetypes, which is, I don't think we're quite as interested in reading about archetypes anymore as we used to be. So a lot of the kind of people that you kind of referenced, like Arthur, Boadicea, if we talk about warriors that are women, which there wasn't a lot of in kind of those kind of days, but Boadicea would be be one of, or Boudica, depending on how you want to pronounce it. They're these mythic characters that we don't know a lot about in terms of what they did, what their motivations were, what their personalities were like. We know what their actions were, though, or what they've been portrayed as to be through stories over the years. And I think, we're not quite as interested in that. We want to know what makes people tick. We want to know the reason why they're doing these things. So that's one of the things that has changed, and that was something that is quite a modern way of telling stories. Because even someone mentioned Lord of the Rings before, and Lord of the Rings is of that style of storytelling where the characters are archetypes. You know, the larger than life characters. Their actions are what makes them heroic. It's not really who they are as people, and we want a little bit more nuance, I think, in our storytelling now. We want to really understand what these people are, and we don't really want to read stories about leaders anymore. We don't really want to read stories about kings and queens and emperors, and we want to read stories about people that are essentially like us. The underdogs, the people that can make a difference in these kind of great schemes and these great dynasties and whatnot. And I think also as well because the range of who is being published has diversified in the last 15 years. There's a different. It isn't the same stories that are being told. So you're getting this kind of different viewpoints, different types of heroes, different types of warriors that we weren't getting 15, 20 years ago even. And I think that is really, really important as well, that people are kind of bringing their own experiences and their own viewpoints and saying these types of people can be heroes too.
Yeah, no, excellent point. Baptiste?
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with all of you, especially AJ's views on World War One. That really shattered the image of the warrior, of what is a hero. But the thing is, historically speaking, for a very, very long time, warriors, they were all noble men. So those were people who, from a caste that was way above, the richest, the most noble people were warriors, not the basic peasant. Basically didn't go to war until very late in history, or until there was no other choice. So stories about warriors, they were like manuals for those sons, basically for the sons who would grow into warriors. So you wanted those stories to be glorious, so that the next generation understand how to behave at war. And also, those stories back then cost a lot of money to make. When you patronized a writer to write a story, each page mattered very much. You didn't want to go into the psychological troubles of war and all of this. You just wanted to go straight to the glory of it, and like how to behave even outside of war, not just war itself, but as a warrior, how to behave with the ladies, how to behave with the poor and all of this. So yeah, every page mattered, and that was for a very clear purpose, not for the individual, basically.
Well, so again, thank you. Yes, those are excellent points. Fantastic, Chantal.
That's really interesting, Baptiste. I didn't know that, so I'll go do a bit more research about that. Thank you. I think the information era has changed the way we view the world and power structures, and therefore ourselves and how we fit into that. And then I suppose that leads into what we want to see in a hero. So just, back to what AJ was saying about the knowledge of war and internal conflicts. I suppose when you're young, you are looking at your parents as, these sort of like, they are your heroes. It's this ultimate good versus everything that's other, like a, Superman trope. But with the complexity of self-reflection as you grow up and as we evolve as a civilization, I think there's a desire for a more complex hero. So I think that's where a lot of that maybe comes from, is just our journey as a human race.
Totally agree. Those are some fabulous points. I think for me as well, I think everybody's touched upon this. The current willingness to explore topics when it comes to archetypes such as trauma, post-traumatic stress disorder, and the things that come out of someone who goes to battle or goes to war. That whole psychological aspect and the willingness to open oneself and be candid about that, which of course we consider perhaps with a lot of the ancient depictions of warriors being really male, it's seen as, contrary to a more macho image. So I think it's wonderful to see a more evolved look into the psyche, especially behind the warrior archetype. So, but those are all fabulous points. Thank you for those contributions there. So that was wonderful. So, and that leads into my next question about challenging that stoic warrior trope. More modern works depicting warriors with fears, vulnerabilities, emotions. How do you feel this has changed the way the archetype is depicted? Because now, as I said before, you'll have books that talk openly about battle trauma, battle scars, post-battle, how feelings be expressed about how horrific the events were. Like, how do you feel that it's affected this archetype of a warrior who is feeling they slaughter hundreds of people and then go have breakfast and move on to the next battle? How do you think it's that trope has been challenged? Kareem?
I think when you look again at the classics, being stoic or being showing no emotion might be regarded as a virtue, actually, or something, one of the main features of a noble hero. But I think nowadays it's becoming like when you look at the characters in the epic or in the fantasy novels or movies or TV shows, it's like a defense mechanism or a way to cope. When you see someone like, for instance, Long and Nine Fingers from the First Law, you feel that sometimes he's trying to contain the bloody nine. He's trying to keep calm or to look stoic, but actually it's just trying to contain the monster inside. I think one of the maybe underrated characters in this world and the Age of Madness was Broad. One of my favorite side characters, by the way. It has the same situation. When he is unleashing his emotions, he turns into something that he doesn't like, but he always appears reserved and calm. But again, you find, I'm glad that AJ raised that example of Frank Castle, because that's a totally opposite example. That is someone, we have a hero or an anti-hero that doesn't care about being stoic at all. We always see his suffering from his trauma and his PTSD. Back to the first question, there's this scene, and I guess you can, if you can remember, between him and Daredevil, and I think this is like a straight comparison between how a classic hero was used to be in the past and how it is now portrayed. Someone is going by the values, and that it doesn't lead to anything useful in the end. But Frank Castle is like the practical kind of guy that gets things done. And again, it's up for the viewer or the reader to whom he will root for. So I think this kind of the stoic archetype has changed completely. Even if they're still stoic, it's totally different thing. It's from a virtue into like a defense mechanism.
That's an excellent point. I had bloody nine in my head too when we were having this. We're talking about this. So yeah, AJ, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, Kareem basically took all my talking points right there, because that's exactly what I was going to say too. Like, even if there is a stoic archetype in a book now, it's not the same stoic, unflinching, like Kareem said, almost like a virtue. Whereas now they use it as a shield to mask and to keep people at half a base so they're not hurt again. Like I wrote down, like Geralt and Kratos are also two examples of that.
I left Kratos for you, by the way.
Yeah, thank you. But yeah, other than that, I really don't got too much to add. I think Kareem summed it up pretty nicely.
No, those, yeah, both excellent. David?
Yeah, it's an interesting one because I think Tolkien actually dealt with PTSD quite well and quite subtly in Lord of the Rings, particularly, but only with one character, which was Frodo. Where and obviously I think this was very, very much because of his experiences in World War One, of people that go to war come back changed, and a lot of the hobbits, particularly the hobbits, do get changed, but in quite heroic kind of ways. Merry and Pippin are literally larger as they come back. Sam has grown into a different person, a more confident person, but Frodo is a shell of who he used to be, and we can recognise that now as PTSD. And he's in this place where he will never be the same ever again, and he has to go to the Undying Lands for peace, right? And I think then fantasy kind of just didn't deal with that kind of stuff for a good 40 years, I think, from the 60s and 70s, 80s. And the first thing that I can really, really remember kind of looking at that was Wheel of Time with Rand's character, where he becomes traumatized by particularly women that have died in his name. The Aiel, the shield maidens that he has, and he goes through battlefields memorizing their faces and names. Which is also, he kind of deals with it. Robert Jordan then kind of looks at the toxic masculinity of that, where he's fine with men dying in his name, and the Aiel shield maidens challenge him on that and say, we are as capable warriors as the men. You need to treat us the same way, right? Which is some of the more progressive parts of the Wheel of Time at that point. And then it starts to become more of a thing that is in a lot of fantasy. Then, like Song of Ice and Fire deals with a lot of trauma and PTSD and whatnot, and the toxicity of warriors. But I think we've kind of got to this point now where, and I think it's a very place where there's quite a lot of millennials that are writing books now that are kind of like, the main kind of criteria of writers now are probably millennials, and there's still some of the older, like Gen X and boomers in some places still writing, but it's mainly millennials. And I think with millennials, we were the kind of the first kind of generations to be like, particularly when it comes to men, that it's okay to show your feelings, it's okay to be, and we came to that quite independently, because I think a lot of our childhood was still told that men don't cry, men don't show their feelings, men don't this, but we've kind of seen that as being quite stupid, and we've kind of embraced, like, emotions as emotions being fine, and have a healthier relationship with them. And I think the characters that we write reflect that a lot more, in terms of, like, they can still, it's kind of looking at what bravery actually is bravery people just not showing emotion, or is it people feeling the emotions but choosing to do the right and difficult thing anyway? And I think that is also because there are more women allowed to write and publish fantasy, are being published in fantasy these days, who have a healthier relationship with emotion, is also reflected in that way as well. So I think that is very much where we're kind of at with it in that way.
No, that's the point. And probably me being the only Gen Xer likely on the panel, I can say that, yeah, the older writers are still out there. Perhaps I'm moving on, but yes, we're definitely still out there writing, and I definitely see the change in how this archetype is.
Well, I'm a geriatric millennial, I've been told, because I was like, that very age, and it's not great having geriatric in front of some kind of term to do with yourself, but it's the way it is.
Badge of honor, my friend. Badge of honor. Baptiste?
Yeah, I think we understand more and more about things like PTSD. It existed, I guess, with any wars, but after World War One, and especially after World War Two, the idea, we saw so many men came back changed, and not always in a good way, and it didn't make them less heroic in the way they fought and all of this. So I think people wanted to dive into this. When you see characters like in Peaky Blinders, especially, like the way they deal with PTSD, some of them, I think Danny in season 1 goes completely shell-shocked at any moment of the day, but the main characters also can't sleep through the night without reviving the war. I think seeing so many men going to war, coming back changed, really change the way people look at what is a warrior. But also, I think we after World War II, there was a great deal of education on humanizing the enemy, and you don't approach battle and war when the guy in front is also a human being. When you look at them the same way, and I think that's why now when we describe a warrior, he doesn't just go to battle, he goes to battle against someone from his own race, if you want. So imagine the Lord of the Rings, if the elves, the men, the dwarves fought against people who looked like them, not Urukai or goblins, or that would be a very different book. I think the characters wouldn't just finish a battle feeling very good about their victory. So yeah, I think that there's this. We understand better and better the psyche of the warrior. At least we have words now for those terms, for those ideas like PTSDs and shell shock and all of this, and we humanize more and more who could be the enemy, which challenges how we view heroes, warriors, and all of this.
That's an excellent point about who the enemy is, and perhaps even there might be a tendency, just a natural tendency to almost dehumanize the enemy when you're dealing with something like Lord of the Rings, and you have these evil creatures as opposed to flesh and blood humans, such as the heroes are. So that's an excellent point. Chantal.
I think what David was saying about millennials writing, what is bravery, is a really good point. I think it's important to talk about mental health in general, but men's mental health specifically. I think there are some alarming statistics out there, and when there's an opportunity, and I suppose in a lot of the books that we're writing now, to show that you can be a hero, but there is and be vulnerable, there's strength in vulnerability, that it's okay to not want to make a decision or to make a wrong decision, but just as long as you keep moving. And it's about the change that hero or that warrior is able to enact. Even if it's something small, it could have far-reaching consequences, or it could be, something that's a callback later in the story. But it just shows that, this hero, however small he thinks he is, matters. So I think that was what I wanted to add.
No, it's an excellent point. Even myself, I've spent the vast preponderance of my working life in law enforcement, and I see the same in the military, in that there is a change in how, even though the concept of stoicism is thankfully, I think it's going by the wayside. Mental health is being prioritized, as Chantal was talking about. I think we're all mentioning that, and that's a good thing, right? This isn't a negative that we're doing this. It's a positive that these things are being emphasized and enhanced, and that there's self-care is an element of for someone who is going to deal with those type of events and be exposed to those type of things, to keep them, upright and able to perform, but more importantly, for their future, for their retirement, etc. You're gonna have one that you can be as healthy as possible, not just physically, but mentally. So those are some.
Just to build on that, PL, like one thing I've noticed is that it's not even just like strictly like industries of law enforcement and military. It's every industry now. Everyone is aware of it. Like I work in mining, and like people get hurt. Like I don't see anything like law enforcement or military do, but people still say, yeah, mental health, like here's all the, like basically blank check to go see a therapist. Here's a blank check to go do this. You need a day to take, like to recover or just to do it. And then there's even more like outside of work, people are just more, I guess, understanding of what can be traumatic, because what's traumatic to me might not be traumatic to anyone else. Like I know friends who like got into a car crash. They were perfectly fine. They didn't hurt themselves. No one was, but like it shook them for like a good couple months. They were like, I can't even get in my vehicle anymore, because what I was lucky this time, but what if I'm not? And I think everyone's just becoming, the conversation has started, and it has expanded to, I think, every aspect of life. And then that allows, because it goes to every aspect of life, it allows authors from all walks of life to bring that conversation in to, regardless, not even just warriors, but just to all characters.
Well, that's a fabulous point, AJ. Thank you for making it, and thank you for, because I was remiss in not mentioning that it is obviously all aspects of life. It extends to us as writers, in when we talk about mental health, and we talk about aspects such as, and again, I don't want to pick on any one particular author. The effect that we authors talk about with the some of the more famous authors that have finished their series, the George R. R. Martins, the Patrick Rothfuses. We talk about things such as reader entitlement and the fact that things can happen to authors that they don't want to move forward with the series, or and a lot of the discussions now are thankfully are centered around authors' mental health, authors' rights to protect themselves, from adverse reaction and adverse criticism, perhaps unwarranted criticism about things like that. When it's it's their writing, it's their work, they can do what they want, versus readers' expectations. So yeah, it's some really important discussions going on in all, as you so aptly point out, AJ, in all sectors, all aspects of life, not just things like military police. So thank you for bringing that up. So that was an awesome point. So okay, so I think the next talking point, one of the things that I believe that really draws readers into the whole warrior culture, and one of the things that I think that readers really get into and appreciate is the fact that these bonds between warriors really, it's in writing we get to see these unique relationships between people that do these really scary things, that go to battle and go to war, and the esprit de corps and the camaraderie, is used as a way of exploring these relationships. Do you feel that, first of all, maybe perhaps if you have some ones that some of your favorites that you love, where you've seen this brought out in a book, where you see this warrior bond is done in a way that you really find intriguing, and or do you believe that this is one? Do you believe that it's one of the reasons why people are fascinated with the whole warrior culture? So I'll go to Green first.
Yeah, I guess you're right, PL, because I remember more than once when on many subreddits that when you ask about what is the most popular trope, you will always found family is the answer. Of course, the bonds and the bonds between warriors. I guess we as human beings, we are social, creatures. We love to belong to something bigger than us. Most of us, I know that maybe some of us might love to be lonely, but I guess the majority loves to belong to a sort of community or a trope or a group or something. So even at work, put it in even in modern context, where since we're kids in school or even at work, you will find groups and everything, and you want to be part of what you consider the coolest group for you. But if you want to, from the warrior context, and put into mind the struggle and the suffering that you go through, I think this makes their bonds even stronger and deeper. And I'll talk about favorite examples. Of course, my favorite is Kings of the Wild. It's really interesting. Not only because they are older they're interesting because they are older in age than your usual type of warriors. They have, when you go through their backstories, and you learn that how their bond have become this strong. Also, another interesting very different group. I think it's the group that Baez has assembled in the first law, because they were as anything related. But as I remember, there was Logan and what was his name? Pharaoh and Jazal, and I think Lokta was with them too. Characters that have nothing in common, but when things get darker and they go in their quest, you feel some sort of bond that is not becoming, it is being formed because of the suffering they face together. So it gives you a clue that in real life, when a group faces a certain circumstances, whether in war or at work or a family, real family, there is a kind of bond that goes up there.
Yeah, that's awesome. I really have to read Kings of the Wild. I haven't read it, but of course, love First Law, and I totally, again, that was in my head. So, yep, no, thanks for those excellent points. AJ.
Yeah. Again, Kareem just took the feet out from underneath me.
You need to change the order next time, PL, because
But yeah, like Kareem said, we are very social creatures, and I think when we see our favorite characters and favorite protagonists interact with other characters, it not only does it strengthen the bond between characters, but it strengthens our bond as readers and writers to those characters. Like, don't get me wrong, as a 20-something male, I love John Wick. Like, those movies are fun. But like, I don't really resonate with him other because he, like, I think in the fourth one he says a total of 35 words. Like, it's really hard to connect with a character that doesn't speak. Whereas, you know, you look at a manga like Berserk, you go through the whole Band of the Hawk arc, you connect characters, you see Guts and Griffith and Casca and all these people connect and burn. And then when the eclipse happens, you're traumatized because like, I've learned to, I feel like I've had a connection with these characters because I've witnessed their interactions. I feel like a fly on the wall or like part of like around the campfire talking with them. And then when that betrayal happens, you're just as devastated as those characters. And I think showing that camaraderie is a great way to not only connect the protagonist with the audience, but also just, you know, if you're a sadist like Mura, you can really pull on your audience's heartstrings and ripcord them and then make the hurt last a little bit longer.
Yeah, no, that's not the point. I think those relationships, they can bring out the best, but also the worst. But I think typically we go to them for the best that they bring out in the characters, and then in turn we love to see that. So, great point, David.
Yeah, I think with a lot of epic fantasy, if you say that sort of come up to like the 21st century, a lot of them were basically ragtag group of people with a chosen one going to save the world in some kind of way, right? And don't get me wrong, I love a lot of those. They're great. I grew up on them. They're fantastic. But there's only so many ways that you can get someone on the edge of the seat where it's like the world needs to be saved, right? Because we see it so much, and we see it in movies, we see it in books, we see this. And I think as we've kind of become more interested in other things, the reason why we come for these things now is because of the characters. If they're going to go and save the world, great, right? We like the plot, we want it to be exciting, but we're interested in the characters, we're interested in their dynamics. And that's what keeps us coming back to these things. Because as we're nearly 40 minutes into this panel, and we've not really spoken about a plot of any of the books yet. It's all about the characters that we've been talking about, the characters that have been doing this, the characters have been doing that. And that's what we kind of like. So when you kind of have these people playing off each other, you know, you can get the banter, you can get the quips, you can get the humor, but then you get to see other sides of different characters when you put them with other types of personalities. And it also helps redefine like what is a warrior, right? So you can have like the classic warrior, the barbarian, the rogue, the you know, these kind of different ones that are going to fight with weapons. But nowadays you have warriors that fight with knowledge. And I don't just mean magic. You have academics. There's a lot of books about academics that go in and save the day, be that the world or be that a person, or achieve some goal by using their smarts. And that is a different type of warrior, and that brings in different types of people into their sphere of influence, and that gives them different goals. So one of the ones that I like recently is a book by Susan J. Morris called Strange Beasts, which is it's set in a world that's kind of like where Dracula and Sherlock Holmes exist together, and you're following the granddaughter of Mina Harper, and the daughter of Moriarty, and they're in this kind of arcane academic world where they're trying to contain monsters, and there is a little bit of action, there's a little bit of like, you know, guns and stuff like this. They are warriors, but they're mainly using their intellect. So, you know, does a warrior always have to fight? is being a warrior choosing not to fight. And I think that's a very modern way of looking at things, and that brings in different types of characters that you can explore, which makes, you know, novels and the genre become richer because we're looking at different ground and exploring new areas.
Yeah, that's about the point, because and you prompted me too, because especially we're talking about fantasy here. In a lot of cases, things like mages, right? They may not be fighting with swords and shields and spears. However, they're deploying magic. There's strictly some fantasies magical one-on-one battles, right? Magic user versus magic user. So totally different type of combat. But yeah, no, those are some excellent points. Fantastic. Baptiste.
Yeah, it's a fascinating trope, camaraderie among warriors, and it's easily one of my favorite to see how warriors bond together. You often hear, those guys were closer to me than my own brothers, kind of idea in books when it comes to warriors. And I mean, that resonates with everyone, developing this kind of relationship. And I think those relationships in books tend to become their own character. So the way those relationships grow. And Kings of the Wild is a fantastic example, because you start the book with a band that's already united. They like each other's from the beginning. They don't have to get to like each other's, and that's quite uncommon. You have to read it, PL. This book is amazing, but then it goes. You have the contrary example that is also quite fascinating, is seeing those relationships develop in a book or in a TV show. Like I remember, for example, Spartacus, the TV show, when you see how the character of Crixus bonds with Spartacus and even kills one of his own countrymen, because this guy is not part of the group yet. And even though he hates, so he kills a Gaul to save Spartacus, whom he hates, while himself is a Gaul. And he was like, why did you kill your countrymen to save me? It's like, yeah, I didn't save you. I saved a brother from the Brotherhood. This idea resonates very easily with readers, viewers, and all of this.
That's an excellent point. And folks, we're not. I hope we're not spoiling things for everybody here. Talk about Lord of the Rings and Spartacus. All these, like, I mean, these are popular. Hopefully, popular enough that for most people, we're not giving any major spoilers here for some of these shows, books.
Should have warned. Spoiler
Don't
alert.
apologize at all. No, I mean, again, the assumption is that you've probably read Lord of the Rings, so it's not a big spoiler. What happened to Frodo or Sam, or in the case of Spartacus, etc. So, excellent points, though. Chantal.
Speaking of spoiler alerts, Boromir dies. and that's always the scene that comes to mind when we're talking about camaraderie and this like found family thing, is, when Boromir's lying there with I don't know how many arrows sticking out of him, and Aragorn comes to him and he says, I'll follow you to the end, brother. It's such a powerful scene, because it's that vulnerability, and that it's okay to lean on your brothers and sisters in arms. So I know David was saying about the ragtag group and the chosen one. I really like it when it's just a bunch of underdogs going to sort of like topple the powers that be. I think that's my favorite sort of found family trope, like Six of Crows style. But yeah, that's all I have to say on that.
No, that's fabulous. Those are some excellent points. I want to move on quickly, and not just because AJ's gonna get mad because Kareem's spoiling but on our next aspect of this, we're gonna talk about women's warrior code. So I do want to give Chantal the first. Oh,
do I get to go first?
Yes, you do. So when we talk about the women's warrior code, if there's a differentiation, when we look at how women are portrayed as warriors, there's obviously many famous female warriors throughout history, but I think when we're looking at how they're written, modern writers write female warriors, I think it may be perhaps different than the ancient writings, but one thing we can talk about is how histories and mythologies influence the more modern representation. So, Chantal, what do you have to say about if you've read books about how female warriors are depicted in the past versus more modern ones. For me, one of my favorite female warriors, Orca from John Gwynn's Bloodsworn. Amazing character. So, but yeah, do you have any thoughts on that?
I think it's definitely an evolution, again, as we sort of evolve as a society. So I think Medusa is a very good mythological example, and I'm going to use it just because it's sort of all over social media at the moment. So this is where a woman was wronged and cursed and served to be the sort of monster that Perseus heroically slays. That's sort of her role. So I think going all the way back, we're looking at women in sort of damsel in distress roles, villains, or maybe something that's a bit more abstract and ethereal, like Lady of the Lake. And then moving forward a bit, I'm going to use Lord of the Rings again. We've got really strong female characters, but in very supporting roles. Obviously, Eowyn as the Shield Maiden. And I mean, unpopular opinion maybe, but I really like that. But they're sort of, in very healing and advisory sorts of roles, not really driving the story forward. And then we come to today, where we have the romanticy phenomenon that's happening at the moment, where we've got fully fledged, complex protagonists who are shaping their own destinies and toppling kingdoms, and Fae kings are kneeling at their feet, and just all sorts. And I think it's great. I've seen so many posts of women saying, I'm going to the gym, I'm going to get fit so I can train with the dragon riders, or whatever it may be. And I just think it's nice to have for women to have their own, their own hero archetype. I think. So when we're saying how history has sort of influence that, I think there's going to be a group of people that say it's a reaction to how women have always been portrayed. I think it's a beautiful evolution, and I think it's great. I'm here for it.
That's wonderful. I totally agree. Baptiste?
I first must point out my favorite read of last year. I think that will be my favorite read, is The Daughter's War. And if you want some strong female warriors, go read that book. The story starts with, basically, they are at a point in a war between humans and goblins, I believe, where most male warriors are dead. They are gone. So the only people left to fight this war are women. So there is a whole generation of women who learn to battle instead of the men. And that's a very interesting starting point for that story. But yeah, through history, you can feel a certain evolution in a women warrior archetype. And if you go to places that are, or before Christianity, or places that are not Christian, this trope, this idea existed and existed for a long time. So that's why you have Boudicca, that is one of the most famous female warrior in history. You have many examples of shield maidens in a Viking or Scandinavian stories. Like, I think there is this tale of the big battle between Wartooth and I forgot who, with many duels between shield maiden and dudes, berserker and all of this. So this is really interesting. And in Japan, you have fewer examples of female warriors, but you do have a bunch, especially during civil wars, when, in order to protect the castle, the male samurai could not stay there. They had to go to war. So they left the castle under the care of their wives, who usually had their own units of female warriors with them. So it might not be a most general idea. That's not what happened the most in history, but they were always there at one point or another. So fascinating topic too.
Absolutely. Excellent point. David.
Yeah, this is something that I find fascinating, because my epic fantasy series, Empire of Ruin, that the protagonist of that is a woman who is basically a paladin. What it's just in kind of like, you know, comparison wise in their role, she's a warrior mage, and I think in the short kind of answer, I would say the reason that there are many more good examples of women in general in fantasy at the moment is because there are more women writing fantasy than there used to be, and men have had to pull to pull the finger out a little bit and do a better job at writing women than what it used to be. Because I think, as Chantel was saying before, women were the roles were very you'd kind of know what the role was going to be, right, of a woman in the book. Before you even met them, they would always, men could be anything, but women had to be certain things. They had to be mothers. They had to be people that nagged the male characters. They had to be princesses and queens and whatnot. And then I think there was this thing where there was this some recognition that we have to show different types of women, and they have to be warriors. This is really true. Like, they aren't remembered by male peers. There's some, like, Ursula Le Guin, Robin Hobb is one of my favorite. Janny Wirtz, who has said this, is also one of my favorites. But there was this thing where, and Chantel, please, like, jump in on this if you agree or disagree. But I think there was this kind of thing where, when, particularly from men, where they were writing women characters that were warriors, they kind of erased any kind of form of femininity. It was like they would write in them like they were warriors that were men. And I think that is something that has also changed, particularly in romantasy, but also in other types of in other subgenres of fantasy, that women can be warriors, but also they can be in touch with their femininity. They can be, and that is a real positive change, because it's, you can have men that are warriors, that are men that are also feminists, that are also in touch with, but are also in touch with emotions as well, and I think that is a real healthy change and a real healthy way that we're looking at fantasy, and we're looking at characters that makes them feel more realistic, that makes people be able to empathize with them, see themselves in them, and inspire people to go and write. I'm sure many women that are writers were people that were reading Janny Wirtz, Robin Hobb, Ursula Le Guin, and the likes, because they were like, yes, we want to do this too. So I think it's great. And as an artistic person that likes to write about artistic characters, I show that artistic people can do different things and can be different types of personalities and can have different roles. I think it's important that we do that for all types of people.
Gives us more to write about.
It definitely does, yeah.
More material. Yay.
Yeah.
Absolutely. AJ?
Yeah, kind of building on what Chantal said, is that, they obviously, women in fantasy and most fiction was one type of role. And now we've kind of gotten to the point where they're the heroes of the story, and it's almost like, what I'm noticing, granted, I don't read nearly as much as I should, because I'm of the person, like, as soon as I start reading someone's book and then I start writing my own, I'm immediately just a Temu copy of that author whose book I'm reading. And I'm like, okay, I can't write and read this person's book at the same time, because I'm just basically copying them at that point. But one thing I've noticed is that it's almost like they've gone back to, like, how a lot of female protagonists that I've come across almost look like the super noble, super virtuous male protagonists of like 30, 40 years ago. And one thing I am noticing, there's been 3 books, of course, the titles have escaped me, where they have female protagonists, and they're, for lack of a better word, they're bitches. They get down nitty gritty with the guys, and they're ruthless, and it's just, and I was like, and when I remember reading the first one, and for the life of me, I'm gonna remember as soon as the call ends. As soon as the panel ends, it's gonna click to my head. I'm gonna remember the book. But I remember reading for the first time, I was like, wow, that is the first time I have ever come across a female protagonist portrayed like, I hate her, but she's just as ruthless as anyone else in the book. And I think that's a really great evolution of the role.
Yeah.
And then kind of building on what David said on the last question is that a lot of the female warriors are, they take their prowess and their skills in battle or whatever to different areas of war, whether it's knowledge, whether it's magic, whether it's like sneaking behind corridors and spreading secrets, like we see in Game of Thrones. And whereas I feel like a lot of the male warrior archetypes, especially in the past, have been strictly like, we're fighting on the battlefield, this is it. Whereas I think, Game of Thrones is a perfect example. Like you could argue some of the most influential and powerful people aren't the ones on the battlefield. It is the ones behind. It's the Littlefingers, it's the Cerseis behind the scenes who are pulling the strings.
Yep. That I totally agree. Kareem?
Chantal was mentioning mythological figure like Medusa, and if you are taking mythological figures to demonstrate how the female warrior type has evolved, I think you see what comes into my mind is the figures like the Valkyries or the Amazonians. This is how the female warriors used to be. It's like a mythological thing, or it's something that is something that you cannot relate to, unlike what PL has just started this question, and I'm glad he mentioned and they brought her up. Orca is, I guess she's my all-time favorite female character, not just about warriors, because what makes Orca special, she's not because she's the most badass warrior or she has the best skills. You look at her motives. She's, first of all, she is I don't want to spoil, but she's a wife and she's a mother who is trying to save her son. And this is what makes you relate to this character, the struggle of her emotion, not because she's like this badass fighter and she doesn't care about what she has killed. You don't care how many people she has killed or how she kills them, but the struggle she has been through and the pain she has been through with all of the fights she has been through. That's why a character like Orca, I think that's why now I see that female warriors and with the modern depiction is more interesting and more relevant. You can relate to, unlike the mythological and the idealistic way in the classics.
Can I just jump in and say I'm so glad that Janny Wirtz as also loves Andre Norton, so it makes me love Janny Wirtz even more.
And those are all exceptional points, everyone. Janny Wirtz, of course, is my personal favorite fantasy author of all time, and her series, The Wars of Light and Shadow, is my favorite fantasy series of all time. And of course, she reminds us, which I think we do need to be reminded, that women have been writing fantasy for a long time. And Janny started writing in the same era of the George R. Martins and the Robin Hobbs and the Robert Jordans, etc. And she is iconic, and I would think many who've read her would agree is one of the greatest living female fantasy, not just female, but fantasy authors out there. So thanks, Janny, for your contributions, and thank you for reminding us of that. So listen, there's other points I wanted to get to, but unfortunately, we're running out of time. This has been such an amazing conversation. These panelists are just phenomenal. Please check out their work, check out their writing. They're all incredible authors. I've only had the privilege of reading AJ's work so far. He is a brilliant author. I can testify that from having read it. I know from reputation that the other panelists are also fabulous authors as well. Check out their work. Follow them on social media. See what they're up to. See what works are coming up from them. I do want to give a quick last announcement that I just going to read what I said at the beginning of the panel, because this is really important, that the May 23rd is a live event for Spotlight Indie in Shrewsbury. That is the big celebration that's coming up. So please, if you're going to be in the UK and will get there, highly recommend it. The next panel coming up, again, is Spotlight Live Speakers with hosted by Holly Tinsley, Fraser Armitage. It has Liam Hogan, Nick Sape, Ren Hutchings, They're going to celebrate the end of the big indie weekend, and they're talking about what's going to be coming up on that May 23rd panel. So also, again, there's a Patreon for Spotlight Indie. Check that out. Everything to do with Spotlight Indie, go to their website. There's a lot of fantastic stuff going on. But I really want to thank my guests. They've been so incredible. For this panel has just been absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for everyone who joined in the chat. All your comments and your participation is greatly appreciated. Thanks to everyone who's going to watch the live, and you're what makes this type of long form content absolutely spectacular. So thanks again, panelists. Thanks again, everyone, for joining, and we'll all say goodbye. We're going to sign off. Take care. Bye-bye now.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.